Hi everyone, I'm Maggie McGrath, Senior Editor at Forbes. Nearly 40 million people are under blizzard warning in the US, and nearly 6,000 flights have been canceled, and 600,000 people are without power. Joining us to discuss this very powerful storm is Jim Foerster. He is a Forbes contributor, but even more than that, he is a certified consulting meteorologist, one of just 270 in the world, so he is just the expert we want to talk to right now. Jim, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Maggie. Good to be here.
So I just described the scope of this storm. Millions of people are under blizzard warning. I come to you from New York City, where there are estimates of well north of a foot of snow right now, and I've been watching the snow come down all day. Can you give us an overview of just how powerful and strong this storm is?
Sure, this is, as you mentioned, certainly a big one, not unprecedented. Maybe we'll get to that in a minute or two, but it's just the ingredients all came together that are often pieces of them may be there for one storm. Maybe you have two or three pieces, or the storm is just a little bit too far offshore. Sometimes everything comes together into that mix and then produces very powerful storms like the one we're seeing today. Combination of extremely heavy snow. There was even thunder reported last night in Manhattan, which you don't normally see in a snowstorm right around midnight. And then there's the really deep pressure. You hear the term bomb cyclone. It means the pressure fell so fast, and when that happens, it gets really windy. So that's the last thing. You got heavy snow. You got temperatures that are right around freezing. Everything is stuck to trees, and then you get in some areas winds that are equivalent to a Category 1 hurricane, which is, you don't have a tropical hurricane here, but a 75 to 80 mile an hour wind coupled with snow on the trees and power lines, and it can just lead to massive power outages, which you're going to be seeing here. And they're not going to go away in a day or two. They're going to probably linger because it's very hard to get that all back together. So just a combination of many things that came together and have come together before, like I mentioned, and just produce a long period of very heavy snow.
A long period of heavy snow, but there was relatively little lead up to this storm. I was following a local meteorologist who, as recently as Wednesday, was saying there might be snow over the weekend, but the storm looks like it'll bypass New York City. And then by Saturday morning, everyone's tune had changed, and it was very clear that we were getting hit and hit hard. How are you tracking it, and what accounted for some of these later changes in the
Yeah, you
forecast?
really have to be careful with a storm, a powerful storm like this, like even 2 or 3 days out, because you don't know if all those things are going to come together. Maybe one of them is not there on these weather models that we all use. And going into this storm, there was a lot of disagreement in the weather models. You hear about European models and you hear about U.S. models, even AI models are in that mix now. And there was not agreement at all. And so it's very, really, people don't always reflect that, the uncertainty when there's a forecast, which they should. In a storm like this, you're better off looking at a range of probabilities rather than saying it won't hit me, because the chance was still there that it would come together. And a couple of the models that had it really quite well forecasted were the outliers. So you tend to maybe ignore them because they're different than the other ones. So it's a very complex event that meteorologists all over the Northeast had to resolve. And it wasn't really evident, like you said, until maybe 18, 24 hours before. And then you knew it was going to be really bad.
By that
So,
by that point, it
storms
had
like
all
this,
converged.
yeah, same thing with hurricanes, tropical storms. You really have to be careful with what we call deterministic forecasts, like yes or no, because sometimes there's maybe, and maybe can hurt like this if it happens. They're low probability but high impact storms, and you have to be really careful with storms like that.
Now, the Northeast was hit by a major snowstorm just a few weeks ago, and here in New York, the snow had barely just melted before the new round hit us. Can you talk about the conditions of this winter or maybe this blizzard as it relates to other storms? How unprecedented is a winter like this and is a blizzard like the blizzard of 2026?
We're having a very cold winter in the Northeast. It popped up now and then, to above normal, but it's been very cold because of upper level blocking. We hear a lot about El Nino in the Pacific, but there's also some things like that in the Atlantic. And when they contribute, they're one of the factors. When they contribute, they keep the Northeast cold, and they tend to stall or slow down storms. So that's what happened a few weeks ago. That's what's happening now, and it doesn't look like it's going to happen again. But there's no guarantee it wouldn't happen again. That blocking pattern, you might hear that a lot, is still in place. So the problem you mentioned, if it doesn't get warm between the storms, or if there's more than one storm, it's hard to get rid of the snow and get things back to normal. And then boom, you gotta come back in again, and get rid of the snow. And there's only so many places to put it. I where I live, they come with giant machines and take out the snow that fell and move it away in trucks because they know there's going to be more snow. They don't always do that, probably not in New York City. So it just compounds itself. You lose parking spots, and it affects commerce, and getting around the city in general is going to be a nightmare probably for a couple of days. So it's that compounding the storms. But I mentioned a couple of times these. I was looking back at the statistics for Central Park, where I think I saw latest around 17 inches, or maybe a little bit more than that, but that's nowhere near the record. And many of us hopefully remember 10 years ago, when there was the all-time snow in Central Park of nearly 28 inches. So that could be maybe 10 inches more than this. And we've kind of forgotten about that storm, but interestingly enough, before that, it was 2006. So we seem to be on oddly a 10-year cycle, 2006, 16, and now 26. Pure coincidence, I'm sure, but those storms were well over 2 feet. And so this has happened before, when those ingredients all come together and things just come. They call one of them the perfect storm. Hurricane Sandy was another event. Even though it was tropical, it was very similar. So the Northeast is a very challenging place, and interesting weather patterns can develop.
You mentioned the sixes. I think the blizzard that a lot of us are still talking about is the blizzard of 1996. Where do you think the blizzard of 2026 will rank, and especially compared to that landmark event, which I think was a formative moment for those of us who were kids in 1996?
Yeah, that's only the top five. That's only number five in Central Park. Like I said, but it goes to show that there has been many big storms in the last recent history. But the challenge with these storms is it's even happening now. You get these bands of snow that kind of rotate around the whole low pressure area offshore, and they're still dropping an inch an hour right as we speak. So some areas of New York City metro are still getting pounded, while it may not even be snowing in others. So while the storm encompassed a huge area, as it winds down, you tend to have these bands that linger. And some areas in eastern Rhode Island, I've seen over 30, almost 35 inches. And they're still getting those bands. So people are going to wind up with over 3 feet. So why Central Park might not have gotten the top 10, I guarantee you, places in Rhode Island have never gotten that much snow before without even looking at the records. That's a lot of snow. And that's where the hurricane force winds are. So the eastern part of Long Island and eastern part of Massachusetts are going to really get the brunt of what's still going on for about another 8 to 10 hours.
8 to 10 hours. And we've been talking about snowfall, but I'm glad you mentioned the wind. There have been warnings of whiteout conditions on and off here in New York and in the Northeast over the last 18 to 20 hours. I'm wondering, Jim, as you look at the snowfall, the wind, the ice, what's the most dangerous part of this storm? If you were to warn people at home to stay vigilant about anything in the coming hours and days, what would it be?
Well, the power outages are always a challenge. People want to get back to normal. They may have emergencies that they have to, people might be on systems that need electricity, or it's just an inconvenience. The kids want to, get online and chat with their friends because everybody's home. Obviously, there was no school today. There won't be tomorrow, and there might not be Wednesday in some areas. So uh, people are homebound and they want to get back to normal, but be patient. It's going to take days for power outages. There'll probably be at least a million, if not more, without power at some stages during this storm. It's going to be quite widespread. And the areas that are getting pounded right now, eastern part of New England, even eastern part of New Jersey, it's hard to get all that infrastructure back together because the crews also have homes and they also have to get to work. They're people just like you out there living, and you just can't snap your fingers and put up power lines where there's millions of people. So be patient. People are doing their best. The airports will get open as soon as they can, and it'll be normal like that. But there'll be massive delays because it takes air traffic days to catch up after these kind of events. So people just have to be patient. And I know it's easy to say. I've been through these kind of storms out here where the biggest danger when you lose power is extremely cold weather. Fortunately, that won't be the case here because then people are in really bad shape. But just be patient, get a couple of blankets on, pop some popcorn up, do old-fashioned things, maybe like talk to each other and play games, and listen to the National Weather Service warnings. If there's blizzard warnings still, that means don't go out. You might not be able to be dealt with if you get stuck somewhere. So you have to be very, very careful when you venture out against advice.
You mentioned the flight cancellations, the power outages. Have you started to look at the potential economic impact of this blizzard, or is it too early to say?
It's too early, but they have, they chart these things with billion-dollar disasters because it takes away whether it's winter, summer, thunderstorms, whatever. And this will be a billion-dollar disaster. I can almost guarantee you. There's just you mentioned 40 plus million people under blizzard warnings. That is not normal. And I suspect that's going to be a massive impact on many areas. Our education, like I said, it'll be days before they're back to work. Overtime, countless hours of overtime for civil works, and they have to bring crews in from neighboring states. Like you live in New York City, there's not enough utility trucks to get the lights back on because otherwise they'd be sitting around doing nothing. So they use mutual assistance, and they bring crews in from other states. Well, the other states also have similar problems, so they have to come from further away. Like maybe crews from where I live in Minnesota, I'm sure, are on their way to the Northeast to assist, but it'll take a day for them to get there. So all these things take time, and people just have to be patient, and it's very difficult to do that when you're cold and you can't get back to your normal life. So that's the challenge, I think, with any major storm like this.
You talked about the coming days. There's still, in the coming hours, more snow forecast coming down. But as you look at the forecast, Jim, what are you seeing? When will this let up? When will the snow let up? When will the wind let up? And when will the temperatures rise just a little bit?
Yeah, well, the snow is basically over for everybody outside of eastern New England. So it's still snowing lightly in a few areas of western Long Island and southeastern New York City, but very lightly. There's still extremely heavy snow falling, like Providence, Boston, out in the outer Capes, and the storm is just spinning out there. It's blocked in by that North Atlantic thing I mentioned earlier. So it isn't just going to lift out here in a few hours. It's going to take till evening for that snow to end. As far as warming up is concerned, not the right pattern for warming up. It's another little system forecast actually to zip on through later in the week. Nothing close to this type of storm, but it'll reinforce the cold air that's been over the Northeast. So I didn't look at the forecast too much in depth before I hopped on, just looking at the storm itself, but it isn't going to warm up anytime soon. I would look for the last, part of February starting to be cool, and there's not a magical reason why it all of a sudden would turn warm when the calendar turns to March. It could be a chilly few weeks here coming up still, and there could easily be another storm that affects the Northeast with March weather. I mean, it can easily snow in March.
That it could. Is there anything else you want the Forbes audience to know about this blizzard and the conditions that are affecting, as we said, 40 million people?
I think the one thing that stood out to me is usually when you have a storm like this, the temperatures are cold, real cold, like in the teens or 20s, and the snow doesn't stick to the trees or power lines, particularly the big the distribution. I'm sorry, the transmission lines, the big ones. When it does, and the winds are blowing that strong, that's a nasty combination, and that's rather odd. I think that might be talked about a lot afterwards. I don't think it ever got below freezing in Philadelphia, and they had almost 2 feet. That's pretty rare. That's wet, heavy snow that's going to be around. It's like paste. It's hard to move, hard to shovel if you've been outside yet, and it's not going to go anywhere anytime soon. And it will cause power outages, big ones. I think that'll be one of the major problems here as we go on, particularly Eastern New England and Eastern Long Island. They're gonna have a tough go here to get power back on.
Jim Foerster, Forbes contributor and certified meteorologist, thank you so much for joining us. For those who wish to follow Jim's coverage, you can find him on Forbes.com under our science section. Jim, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.